Welcome to today's podcast. Today I have the lovely Dr. Melinda Mann joining me. Melinda is a proud Darumbal woman and South Sea Islander who has forged a career advocating for equitable and accessible education. Melinda draws a lot of her professional experience in community education, training and development through her lived experience and also her upbringing in rural Queensland. She's also able to really draw on a lot of the stories that she collated as part of her PhD, where she was exploring the experience of Indigenous youth on Darumbal country who were transitioning from year 12 into further studies or into work or in community responsibilities. And all this brings a real informed and insightful approach to her work. In her current role as Deputy Director of Student Life and Wellbeing at Seeker University, Melinda works to ensure education is accessible to all equity and disadvantaged student cohorts. I should also note that Melinda is a good friend of mine and she was my boss a few years ago now. And she is one of the most inspiring women that I've had the pleasure to work with. So I'd like to thank you for joining us today, Melinda.
Thank you for having me, Tanya. It's nice to be here.
That's great. And I thought I'd start today by asking you if you could share a bit about how having a lived experience which can relate to students really helps when you're trying to develop an appropriate student experience.
Such a good question. I think that, I grew up around here at the Rockhampton region. Rocky is my hometown, and so I grew up, most of my childhood was spent between here and Mackay. Those are my stomping grounds, and I did, kind of my formal years in those, in that region, those rural townships along the railway line, with a dad who worked on the railways, and but both of my parents having grown up in this region as well, and my great-grandparents, and of course I could go back for thousands of generations of my family being from this area, and then moving down into New South Wales as a teenager, and then coming back. So I think when you talk about having lived experiences and shared lived experiences with the people and the students that come to this institution in particular, for me it's just about being authentic to who I am, how I was raised and where I was raised, and with the people that I live around and have lived around my entire life. And so I think that lived experience and a shared lived experience with others, it forms within yourself as someone who works in higher education, authenticity, and you bring that into your workplace. It's how you see the world. It's how you view the issues of the world. And when it comes to education, and as you mentioned in the intro, my passion is making sure that the people from around this area and around areas that are similar right across the country have the access and have the opportunities that I've been able to take advantage of. That all of that comes from just being authentic to who I am as an individual and in the reality of the world that I live in.
Cool. And so I guess thinking on the other side of that, we do have staff throughout our university system that do have really valuable lived experiences. How do we make sure that as, I guess, an organisation, as an entity, that we are actually making the most of that experience, and what those people in particular can bring and what insights they can bring to the student experience?
I think it's great when universities can reflect in our staff profile, our student profile, demographics of our student profile. So coming from this region, from a poor background, being first in a family, to access higher education. And I know I'm not the only person at this university who's done that, and there's lots of us that are Central Queenslanders through and through. And I think that it's really important in universities that we do reflect the cohorts of students who come through our universities. It makes, again, going back to that, being authentic. It's being authentic to the experiences that our students are going through, that they're living, being first in family, knowing what that's like, being able to make decisions that impact our students, knowing what it actually is like, what the reality is on the ground for students who are, single parents or who are studying online. Another experience that I've had, being from remote areas or rural areas, and having to form networks and, outside of your family because your family's never been through university before, and having to try and balance all of that as well. So I think universities, we have to reflect the profile of our students when it comes to the people that we recruit and the styles, the nature or the style of recruitment processes that we go through, and how do we attract and make universities a place where, where those types of people, my type of people, can come and work and contribute and be leaders and are valued and are safe.
Yeah, and I think the key thing is actually being listened to, isn't it? So that yes, we bring these people here, but how do we make sure that we're really valuing, and that's really through listening and learning from them.
Yeah, and I think giving people the space and trusting people to make decisions. When I reflect on the career I've had in higher ed, there have been key people that I've have entrusted me with making decisions and being put into positions where I can be a leader, and that's made a huge impact, not just on me and other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people or students, but others as well who have been able to benefit from from the work that I've been able to do, and empower others to do the same. And I hope that others get that chance as well. But it does mean that you have to trust people and share that space with others, and intentionally make space for other people to come in and to step back and allow others to make decisions. And I could go on.
Yeah, we could be here all day.
That's right.
So given your experiences and what you've learned from others, because I know you have a really broad professional network as well, what suggestions or recommendations would you have for creating the best student experience overall? And then also, I guess, whether that's the same or whether that would be slightly different for particular equity groups, how we could make each group of students feel that they're getting the best experience for themselves.
I know that you've got to have students involved all the time in making decisions and designing, the programs and the supports that we design. We often think that we know what's best for students, or we can research and we can find the data, or we can understand and interpret things, and come up with ways to support students that we think is how they want to be supported. And then we make these vast generalizations, or we make a lot of assumptions about what students actually need. But it is so important to always have students involved and to make sure you listen to those students. And there are so many wins, of course, that come out of that type of collaboration with students. I know, having working with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students, that often there are assumptions made about what Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students experience, or about what regional and rural students experience, or what online students or first and family students experience. But their experiences change all the time. And what we think we knew that they needed 2 years ago, it might be something different today. And if we don't keep in if we don't have relationships and connections with students that constantly, continually inform the work that we do, then it is really, it's really easy to miss key opportunities and significant times where students actually need support. And so I think challenging ourselves to, when we think we're the expert on what students experience, it's really important to challenge ourselves and challenge what we know, and to always come back to those relationships with students and connections, and making sure we're informed by them as much as we are informed by the reports and the data that we get when we're looking at those, or the research that gets done. We've always got to come back to student voices and making sure, again, that we've got space for those students to have input into what we do.
That is a real big challenge, isn't it? Because particularly supporting a really large number of students, it's easy to get caught up in that we need to systematise things. We need to have a process that is going to be the same for everyone, because that's about efficiencies, and it's not necessarily about the effectiveness for the student, though, is it? And how do we kind of come up with a balance so that it's kind of a win-win for everyone?
It really is about centering students. And if you really do that, if you really value students and want the student experience to be the centre of supports and services, then you've got to have an honest conversation about what is at the centre. Is it students, or is it structures and processes? And oftentimes it is the structures and processes that are at the centre of what we do, and not students. So I think it does come, there's a bit of fear involved. Sometimes we're scared of what students might say, or how that's going to reflect on us. But we've got to kind of get over ourselves and be open to criticism, and take it all and learn to grow from it.
Yeah, and it's not easy, is it? Because life's not easy. It's complex. The people that we're working with are complex, and the world is complex these days. So I think sometimes we kid ourselves that we can make it simple, when in fact we're not actually addressing necessarily the problems. We're kind of, maybe it's a Band-Aid, or maybe we're sort of distracting ourselves from the actual situation. I know when we get it right, you see such a change, and such a transformation in the students that you talk to, and it's such a powerful thing.
And that's really important, because we've got to ensure that we're learners as much as students are learners, and not think that it's this one-way street, that we're the university and we teach the students. But putting ourselves, or having a learner's disposition enables us to take the critique and to learn from what students say, from what they experience, and to fill in the gaps as well around all of that knowledge. And not being afraid to be put in our place when we think we know what's best for students. And that is really important. It does come down to your own values and your own attitudes and beliefs. And when you can be humble and understand that no one owns knowledge, no one owns it, no one owns that kind of, if you become a student yourself in the whole process of education, or a learner in the process of education, regardless of where you sit at across the levels of education, then you're more open, I think, to understanding that taking direction and instruction from students themselves is part of that process of learning and growing together. So
it's almost like an evolution, isn't it, from the industrial age education format into what that information age and that ideas age and that innovation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always come back to yarning circles, and that idea of that everyone is equal, and that everyone is able to contribute, and no one is the owns all knowledge. People will specialise in particular things, but again, that there's a responsibility to ensure that everybody is heard and understood equally, and their opinions are respected. And I think that's a good way to kind of, to manage when it comes to, to workplaces and to the way that we create and supports and services for students as well.
Great. Well, that's all the questions that I have. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about or to share while we're here?
Probably just, I think when we talk about, and I know through your podcast, you're talking to lots of different people who are involved in education in some different ways. And I think from the podcast that I have heard, that everyone brings something different, and difference is good. I love differences. Differences should be celebrated. They should be acknowledged. I think that that's the only way that really we can create really rich learning environments and workplace environments, is when everyone can be valued. Everyone can contribute in a way that is is a way that makes them feel heard and seen, and and they just contribute to a really rich fabric of society. So whether you, like me, come from the bush, raised up in little small country towns, and still be able to come to the university and make a contribution in a Western institution, higher education institution. And I think that's great. And I think I hope that many more people will be able to do that, especially here at our institution, and that will celebrate all of our differences.
That sounds exciting. It sounds really good.
It is. Mm.
Well, thank you again for joining me, Melinda. It's been lovely having this chat, and I look forward to having more in future and for sharing this with everyone. Thank you.
No problems. Thanks, Tanya.